The week that we have been waiting for all off season long is finally here. The 2023 NFL season kicks off at Arrowhead Stadium on Thursday, and just makes a ton of sense for Newbie and I to go right in and break down the Thursday night football game. So welcome on into GoldSheet TV. Hope everybody had a fantastic Labor Day weekend. And Newbie, let's not delay this. Let's get right to it. We know how long we've been waiting for NFL season to start. If you're a current GoldSheet subscriber by the time you see this video, the GoldSheet for week 1 of the NFL and week 2 of college should be already in your hands. If you're not, head over to goldsheet.com and make sure to hop on. You can get a weekly package for just the 1 week of GoldSheet, but you should save some money and get a season-long subscription. Newbie, Thursday night football, Lions, Chiefs. Right now, Kansas City, 6.5-point favorites at home. Total 54.5, 55, depending on what shop you look at. Talk to me. Where's your head at in this opening football game of the season?
Well, I mean, so much of this game is going to come down to are the Lions who they said that people are all off season long. The thing is if people remember what happened last year, the reason why the Lions are the talk of the town is how they ended the year. It's not ancient history of how they started the year. I mean, they were one of the worst teams in the NFL to start the year last year. Do they have carryover from last season, or do they stumble out of the gate? That remains to be seen. But if you look at the track record of their head coach, Dan Campbell, it figures that they're going to stumble out of the gate. Just because there's hype around them doesn't really change anything. But then you'd look at the Kansas City Chiefs and the fact that they really haven't been a terrific team to cover at home. All of that, I hate leading off being like, I don't really have much as far as the side goes, but I really don't. I think, you could make a case for either side here. I think, if you're able to go out there and find that 7, I think Detroit is a fine bet on opening night. Who knows what can potentially happen? But if you're able to get that 6.5 and under that 7 points, I could easily make the case for the Kansas City Chiefs coming out and, flexing their muscle a little bit against the team that was the talk of the town. I think, there's 2 different ways to be able to break down this game. And honestly, Eric, I see it both ways. So I don't think I'm going to be betting this one outside of some props that I like. I'm wondering what your thought is, or maybe if you have something on the total, because again, it seems a little bit high to me on opening night, seeing a 55 out there at a prominent offshore. But I don't know if I can start the year off being quite a masochist and go under. So I don't have anything I love. I have a lot of stuff that intrigues me in this game, but I do have some props that I will be betting and have bet already. So I'm wondering how you're breaking down this game.
Yeah, so this is like a perfect example of betting numbers, not teams in the NFL. If you've been handicapping betting the NFL for, a long period of time, you know these things. If you're newer to handicapping and watching and betting, 7 is one of the biggest key numbers in all football. And by key number, that means that 7 is the second most likely point differential for a game to end in NFL scoring throughout its history. So this is just a simple, like you just said, if you're giving me plus 7 points, you got to take the Detroit Lions in this situation because you're getting 7 points. You're covering that key number of 7. You're not winning on it, but you're pushing on it. And conversely, if you like the Kansas City Chiefs, you should be getting that minus 6.5 right now and not hoping it doesn't get pushed up to 7, because once the number hits 7, you got to look at Detroit. As long as the number is sitting 6.5, you're probably looking at Kansas City because that key number has not been covered by Detroit. But like you mentioned, I'm not interested in the side of this matchup. I'm looking at the total. And I know that it's 54.5. I know that is another key number in football for a total. It's even at 55 at some shops. Like you said, it's higher than that. But newbie, serious question. Who the hell is stopping anybody on either side of the field in this game? Tell me who is stopping somebody, because I don't see anybody.
But the thing is, and again, it's so tough the first few weeks of handicapping the NFL because all you have to draw on is last season. But the NFL is so unique in that every single season is going to be a microcosm of itself. So sure, you can look at what happened last year, and what happened last year with this Detroit Lions team is the fact that when they went away, when it was home sweet home, they were putting up points like crazy. You know what I mean? And it was always video game numbers. When they were inside the nice dome there in Detroit, when they would go on the road, they would struggle a little bit. But even so, I'm kind of with you. I think, sure, it's high, and you can always say, well, they're going to start off, they're going to be having to go through some growing pains. But I'm with you. I think the reason why I like some props in this game is because both of these defenses figure to be just as suspect as they were last season. So I'm with you, man. I can't come on here and make a case for the under. You can make anecdotal cases for the under, but if you start diving into what these teams looked like in their recent history, not just last season, I don't think defensive stops are going to be the highlight of what we're seeing on Thursday night to kick off the NFL season. I would agree with you there for sure.
So something we know about Jared Goff from his time in the National Football League is that once you put pressure into the mix for Jared Goff, you get people in and around his personal space. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in football. You give him time, you let the play develop, you have a clean blocking up front, he'll make all the throws you need him to make. Chris Jones, the arguably best defensive tackle in football now, literally just as good as Aaron Donald at this point in his career after what we saw last season, is a major holdout and is anticipated to not play. And I don't think there's any chance that these two sides come to a conclusion to get a deal done. And Chris Jones is fully on the holdout train. He's accumulated over $2 million in fines by simply just not showing up to anything Chiefs related. So that's obviously a good thing for the Detroit Lions that they don't have to deal with one of the best players in all of football coming at them. But something I need to quote from TA Analytics, from Clev TA on Twitter, that I found that is, definitely worth mentioning, is when you look at week one of the season in the last 5 years, Patrick Mahomes, what he has done in week one is borderline unprecedented. He has a 0.54 EPA per play, which is number one in the National Football League. He has and he's averaging 37, and the Chiefs are averaging 37.8 points per game in Patrick Mahomes' week one starts as a starting NFL quarterback. Newbie, I know that's a lot. That's a 38, it's a small sample size. We're only talking 5 years there, but we're talking about a 38 points per game. Can you see the Chiefs putting up 38 on this Lions defense? Because again, we're talking about a defense that finished and PFF overall 29th last year, and all they did was add Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but he got hurt. Emmanuel and Cameron Sutton aren't turning this defense all of a sudden into this top covered defense. So, newbie, can Mahomes go off for 38 points for the Chiefs? And then also, are the Lions going to score some points? Because the one thing that also has me a little bit concerned about the Lions' output is that Jared Goff did not play any preseason football. Now, again, going back to my guy TA here and looking at some of his stats, playing when quarterbacks that do not play or take a single snap in the preseason, only 33% of the time those quarterbacks went over their team totals, and they went under by an average margin of 5.2 points. So there's the pros and the cons there. You have the pros that Mahomes is going against a terrible defense that he should probably be able to amass these amazing stats. You have Goff going against a defense that can't pressure him. So if he's not too rusty, he should be able to do well. And I could see this game being a complete shootout, newbie. I really am looking at the over at 54.5 in this matchup.
Yeah, I think it's a great case to be made, and while we look at those week one numbers for Mahomes, it would, we would be remiss if we didn't mention they played the Arizona Cardinals last season in week one. So I don't think they were as bad as this year's Cardinals, but I'm with you, man. Like, here's the thing is the Kansas City Chiefs are going to get their points in this game. I think we both agree with that. I think, looking towards a Kansas City team total would be a terrific look because they're going to score points. They're going to get to 30 points. I would be shocked if they didn't. The question is, does the same happen on the other side? And I think the case that you just laid out there, not seeing a Chris Jones and really having a focus on, hey, we need to be able to get the ball consistently downfield from home and away. That was the talk of the offseason, I'm sure, for the Lions and everything that they were doing in camp. So they want to come out. I wouldn't be shocked if they win the coin toss if they say, give us the ball. They want to show, hey, we can hang offensively with this Kansas City team. So if part of your handicap is that the Lions are going to be able to get their points as well, I don't see how this game goes under. But just hearing you talk through it, I think Kansas City team total is a terrific look because of what we know about this team and just the way that the matchup sets up. So I'm with you, man. I think that's a terrific way to look at this game. And the more that you talk, the more that even if I got 57.5, I don't think I'm betting under on the opening night here. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes had all off season to hang out, cook up plays, work all summer. We obviously know what happened last year when everybody hated it. Like, oh no, Tyreek Hill, is this team going to be, okay? Yeah, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah,
So on the other end, Ben Johnson is one of the best pure offensive coordinators in football. He's got a
true.
loaded offensive line. He's got weapons out the ass. So like, I can see them moving the football, especially on a Chris Jonesless Chiefs defense, because we are talking about a premier defensive tackle. We're not talking
Yep.
about like even in the terms of like guys like our team, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Obviously, the Eagles have a ton. Jordan Davis now into that mix with Jalen Carter and whatnot. Like we're talking about very, very good players, but Chris
Yep.
Jones is the best player, and they simply don't have that 1-2 punch with him. Chris Jones is that defensive anchor. But going on the
Well,
player
and
prop,
and and to your point too, to that end is you're missing Chris Jones, but also like it's not like the back end is all that crazy. And what do we know about the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs? He's a bend but don't break kind of guy. This offense for the Lions is made to play against bend but don't break. They're fine with having one drive have 10 targets to Amon-Ra St. Brown, each of them averaging 5 yards per depth on it. So I think as you break it down, it's hard to think the points aren't coming in this game for sure, man.
yeah, and as Steve Spagnuolo, the DC for the Chiefs, he needs to get a negative play. And who normally is that game record that gets that, tackle for a loss or sack or
Yeah.
pass batted down the line of scrimmage or pressure? That's Chris Jones, and he will not be on, or probably not be on the football field. I still like the over, even if he isn't on the football field. I just hope that we maybe get a 53.5 to get that key number 54 back in play. But all this talk about the Chiefs and obviously a lot of talk about the lack of defense there, that has us both targeting different Detroit Lion running backs on their player props. Because guess what? If you haven't been paying attention, player prop lines and numbers are out for Thursday Night Football. I even saw some anytime touchdowns out for some of the Sunday games. So we'll talk touching more on that on on Thursday. Then later today, we'll be talking more of our award winners. But let's go into some player props, actionable plays for Thursday Night Football right now. Newbie, you're loving the rookie Jahmyr Gibbs, 12th overall pick. What do you think he's going to do on this football field on Thursday?
I mean, if you go back to just when we were talking about the rookie of the year potentials, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to fit in very nicely with this offense, simply because of what he has done in his career thus far. He's played against top flight competition because at his time at Alabama in the SEC, where he's playing against stout defenses, he averaged 6.1 yards per carry, he averaged 10.1 yards per reception. So this is a guy who could do it through the air and also on the ground as well. And that's a dream for what this team wants to do with the Lions. If you just look at the fact that running back core that they had last year that had a very difference in talent in what they have in Gibbs and Montgomery this season, they were the best rushing attack in the NFL. And I don't think that's going to change. I think that's a philosophy type thing that they bring to the table here. So I think the usage is certainly going to be there. Jahmyr Gibbs, I know that the talk of the town is Bijan Robinson, but Jahmyr Gibbs is like the Costco version of Bijan Robinson, because terrific all-around skill set. I laid out those numbers that he put up right there. I mean, he does it both. And then if you just look at who they're playing this week, Kansas City, top 10 in rushing yards allowed last year. We both don't think that's going to be changing much. They can get attacked through the air. So all that leaves me with Jahmyr Gibbs going over his 71.5 rushing and receiving yards. I was thinking of ISOing in on the receiving yards instead of doing the rushing as well, but having it be the first week, this is how I want to get down on it, because I want to see how his usage works out. I could see him having, an 80-yard rushing game when we go over on that just alone. I could see him having a near 70-yard passing game and having him potentially flirting with this going over alone. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute stud. And while he's going to succeed some of the work to the guy who you're going to be breaking down in David Montgomery, I think a lot of that is going to have to do more around the goal line and in short yardage situation. Gibbs figures to be the guy who gets them down into those situations, and Montgomery is the hammer that goes over the top. And also, if you just look at the targets for the running backs last year for the Lions, who's going to pick up the DeAndre Swift slack? Somebody has to, and they're not airing the ball out to anyone but Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's a lot of target shares that need to be soaked up. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the guy coming out of the backfield to do it. So give me Jahmyr Gibbs over the 71.5 rushing and receiving yards. That's a prop that I like. I bet already. I like it all the way up to around 76.5.
And something that I love about that too is I think you made two great points. Like I could see Jahmyr Gibbs, breaking out like a 130 or 40-yard reception or rush at some point during the game. And there was a lot of like talk. Obviously, it's like, we go back the last couple of years, never draft a running back in the first round. Absolutely never draft a running back in the first round. I'm like, how could you about drafting running back in the first round? To now seeing two running backs being drafted in the first round this past year. And I know you made that comparison. You have Bijan Robinson, and now Jahmyr Gibbs, and maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is like a slightly worse Bijan Robinson. But the reason why these two players were drafted in the first round are 110% because these teams do not view these players as running backs. They just view them as weapons. If Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, either or, obviously we'll focus on Gibbs now, has the ability to get split out wide in the slot, even on the outside, and not be a decoy, not be there and the defense could sit there and say, hey, this guy's out here that could basically maybe even take half this playoff because he's just out here to look like they're trying to do something new, and actually run crisp routes, catch the football, and create yards after the catch. That adds such a big dynamic to an NFL team because it's not personnel based anymore. Like if you know that this player is on the outside, and like every time he's on the outside, they always run the football and he's on the outside, yeah, you could probably cheat toward the run. If Jahmyr Gibbs is as athletic and, as refined as it seems as if he might be already, and obviously he's a rookie, can improve on these things, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs out in the slot and he's out there putting defenders on skates, which is a reason probably why they drafted him, then he could easily be in that mold of one of the best weapons in football from the get-go. And Newbie, I love that look for you for week one.
Appreciate that, my guy. I want to know what you have because I mean we're going thunder and lightning here in the backfield, so you got to let the folks know what you're looking at in the backfield of the Lions.
So I'm going with the simplistic approach. I love where your head's at. 17 rushing touchdowns were lost from the Detroit Lions offense, and that's not even counting DeAndre Swift moving on. So Jamal Williams now in New Orleans, David Montgomery brought in to be the complement piece. Like we just talked about with Gibbs in a perfect world, obviously we'll see how his skill set actually translates, is more of the weapon type, while David Montgomery is more of a traditional running back. So when we do get to the goal line or in the red zone, I anticipate David Montgomery picking up that rushing share that Jamal Williams dominated because as how, I think without the injuries, you would very clearly say that last year DeAndre Swift is a better football player than Jamal Williams, but Jamal Williams cashed in all the touchdowns because that was his type of game, typical bruiser, bigger player, got into the end zone, scored. I think that's exactly what we're going to see with this Lions offense, except just new faces. I think Gibbs is going to be your Swift-type versatile running back that could do it all. Montgomery is a proven, solid running back. And when it comes down to the goal line, you're going to want your bigger body guy, hopefully running through some A, B, C gaps with your Detroit Lions offensive line, which is one of the best in football. Again, going back to the Chiefs, in the situation we're not seeing Chris Jones on the football field. Even if he is, you still have to be able to run the ball here and there. And I think the most likely candidate to get into the end zone is David Montgomery. And we're getting plus money on it. I know it's a little bit early to be making any real declarations. Like for all we know, Ben Johnson's got a whole new strategy, and David Montgomery's doing the out wide stuff, and Jahmyr Gibbs is trying to squeak through the offensive line. But I doubt it. I think that Montgomery is going to take the more of the goal line carries, while Gibbs is more of the every down weapon that when he's out on the field is going to keep defensive coordinators unbalanced and at bay. And then when Montgomery's on the field, maybe you can expect more of traditional running the football or pass protection, but that's going to be important down at the goal line. So quick recap, Newbie and I are saying that when it comes to side betting in this game, it's all about key numbers in the NFL. If you're getting a +7 or 7.5, you got to look toward Detroit. You got a 6.5, you should probably look toward Kansas City. I have a strong lean on the over, not something that's making the Gold Sheets card or my personal plays, and obviously never tease down totals. So I would never be looking to, tease that down a couple points or do anything like that. No, not in my repertoire. And then player prop wise, I'm going with Montgomery to find pay dirt. I think that was plus 110 at FanDuel, if I'm not mistaken. And newbie, you're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs to go over his rushing and receiving total. Sounds like a hell of a first game to me, newbie. I'm very excited for this first matchup.
I'm locked in, man. I can't wait. So we got Thursday. That's a little appetizer. And then Sunday, don't come texting. Don't come calling. I got a date with my TV all day long on Sunday. So, yeah, best part of the year is back, baby.
And we still have some work to do because on Thursday, like I mentioned, we'll be breaking down every single game. But before we get back into that, because obviously football season is here, we'll also talk some like survivor picks or whatnot. But we got to do what we did last week and do basically gun to the head. What awards are we betting? So newbie, you want to just go right through the list. Tell me what awards, if you had to bet, what you're betting, and anything that you want to elaborate on, please feel free to.
Yeah, and again, the guy sitting alongside me, EP Eric Pauly of the GoldSheet.com, is the guy who I go to when we're talking about futures. I'm not a huge future bettor, but hey, if we had to make some picks here, you can go back if you want full breakdowns. I won't belabor the points because a lot of these I've talked about already. If you want to hear Eric tell me why I'm wrong about Matt Lafleur being Coach of the Year, go back and check out our Coach of the Year episode. He's still at 16-1. For me, it's as simple as if the Packers make the playoffs, he is a live ticket. And at 18-1, at 16-1, that's something that I'm interested in when all you need to do is make the playoffs in a division that a lot of people think there's going to be some step backs for that top team in the Minnesota Vikings. Coach of the Year, Matt Lafleur. For me, MVP, another one that you're not going to like because I know you don't like the head coach. I know there's questions about the guy himself. It's Justin Herbert for me. I think having Kellen Moore coming in, they're going to be passing more than ever. And if he is efficient as a passer, he is going to put up some insane video game numbers with this attack. Even if he throws interceptions, even if they sputter, they're going to be dropping back and passing all day long. That's all Kellen Moore knows. It's all he does. Justin Herbert, 12-1 MVP. The offensive player of the year for me, I'm looking at Nick Chubb because my guy alongside me, Eric Pauly, has been the conductor of the Browns hype train. And if he's the conductor, the engine that makes it run is going to be Nick Chubb on this team. If the Browns are legit, it can't all just be Deshaun Watson undoing, the struggles that he's gone through on and off the field. He's looked pretty bad. What's a great way to bring a quarterback back along is have one of the best running backs in the NFL, and they have that in Nick Chubb. No more Kareem Hunt stymieing his usage. Another guy that could be putting up video game numbers week after week. Nick Chubb for the offensive player of the year, finally getting a running back given the nod there. Defensive player of the year, EP, I got TJ Watt. You can go back. I talked about how much I love him. It comes down to the Steelers suck when TJ Watt doesn't play. The Steelers somehow win games when TJ Watt does play. He's going to have sacks. He's going to have usage. They've added some players around him. So defensive player of the year for me, TJ Watt. And then the last three, I'm going to let you break down because offensive rookie of the year, it was Bijan Robinson. That's that. I'm eating the chalk there. Defensive rookie of the year, a guy that you turned me on to in Christian Gonzalez. And then comeback player of the year for me, Lamar Jackson, 25-1. If Geno Smith can win it for being a bad player that turned good again, I think a guy who hasn't gotten much usage the last few years and a former MVP, I don't know if he can get another MVP nod, but comeback player of the year at 25-1 for a team who I think might be around the Super Bowl, give me Lamar Jackson. That's my rundown on the awards.
Yeah, so I can't even really debate you. Like, you convinced me back on Lafleur because while I was bearish on Lafleur as a coach, if the Packers do win football games, which given the NFC North and the NFC and their pretty easy schedule, he should be in the mix. Herbert, again, I was down on Kellen Moore. I am still down on Brandon Staley, but I've come around there. And then you don't need to convince me about Chubb, Watt, Robinson, Gonzalez.
I knew you would like the Chubb one.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm just thinking of ways to get down on Cleveland. I have, but going to my list because I'm right in that same range. So Coach of the Year, this one I honestly don't really love. I was big Shane Steichen early in the offseason, as if you've been with our program for a while. But after everything Irsay has been doing in the media and the whole Jonathan Taylor mix, I just think that there's just some negative energy around that team. And like, I know that's not a real handicapping thing, but talking about long shots, sprinkles, and I don't want to sprinkle on. So run through Dennis Allen, coach of the year, if the Saints end up being how good as they could be with that very easy schedule, even though their win total is already pretty high. If this is really a 12-13 win team that's atop the NFC, I think you get some consideration. MVP, going Aaron Rodgers. I mean, again, I'm not betting this, so take it with a grain of salt when I say it. If he does lead the turnaround of the New York Jets into a number one seed or just a winner of the AFC East, I'm sure Rodgers must be a big part of it. Offensive Player of the Year, Tony Pollard of the Cowboys. I'm bullish on the Cowboys, as most people are. I think that Pollard is going to be more so the straw that stirs the drink for this offense, and I think he's a prime candidate to lead the NFL in touchdowns as a rusher, as well as also just being a dynamic weapon type player. DPOI, Myles Garrett, talked about this ad nauseum. Don't need to continue talking. Brown should be better this year. He's got help across the D-line. OROI, somebody you put me on to, newbie. I'm in on Dalton Kincaid. I know a tight end has never won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, but based on where the Bills drafted him and how they built out their roster, it seems like Kincaid is going to be that high target share kind of guy. And he's got Josh Allen throwing the football. It's not like he has some lesser quarterback. He's got a really good QB in an offense that could be designed for him. So I'm looking at Kincaid, Gonzalez, we broke down and talked about, and that comeback. It's got to be Damar Hamlin, right? This man plays a couple snaps, makes 2 tackles.
It's
like
true.
the guy has to win it, right? I'm not laying the chalk. I'm not laying 275 for a whole season. And I understand your points on Lamar, and I do love him. But I'm going with the chalk of the chalk of any future there could be chalk on. Obviously, narratives play a huge part, as we know. And I don't think anyone's going to be ignoring the Damar Hamlin narrative.
Yeah, that one was too low of hanging fruit for me, but I mean it does come down to that. Like that's why I had to get a little creative, get you a 25-1. But the reality is, and rightfully so. Let's be real. If Damar Hamlin plays some snaps, if Damar Hamlin has one highlight play, dude, like let's be real, that it's curtains. The comeback player of the year has been decided. If he even steps on a field, that 275 turns into minus 350. So I'm right there with you, man. But I figured get a little more creative here.
Yeah, I can't believe it even dropped. It was like 325 a couple weeks ago, and obviously,
I'm surprised.
It's better than the 275 out there. But like you said, if Damar Hamlin makes a third down tackle in the flat on Monday night against the Jets, I think the odds are going to shift right there.
Yeah, they'll pull it from they'll pull it from the board the rest of the season. Yeah.
It'll be gone. They won't even give that award. They'll probably rename the award the Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, the Damar Hamlin Comeback Player of the Year award.
But that'll do it for Newbie and I. Quick recap again. Looking at Thursday Night Football, the over 54.5. Jahmyr Gibbs over rushing and receiving yards at 71.5 rushing receiving. And David Montgomery anytime touchdown score plus 115 at FanDuel and DraftKings. And then our awards we just went through. The ones that we do have stock in, or the GoldSheet has stock in, is Myles Garrett DPOI, as well as Christian Gonzalez DROI. So focusing on the defense there. And we still have time to get a couple more locked and loaded there. But if you enjoyed the show, again, liking the video and subscribing to the channel is the best way to help us grow. And Newbie and I will be back on Thursday breaking down our favorite plays, information, angles, everything for the Sunday slate. Thank you guys. We'll see you guys next time.